Welcome to the FEDLIFE Podcast with Dan Sipe from Serving Those Who Serve. In this podcast, Dan draws from years of financial experience to help federal employees overcome challenges that every Fed can relate to. Join us for this journey as we reach, teach, and serve to help you make the right financial decisions. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the FEDLIFE Podcast. I am your host, Dan Sipe. Additionally, I'm the branch manager here at Serving Those Who Serve and Lee Sipe & Associates. Beginning, as I always do, by saying thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen, and thank you for your service. To me, to everyone in this country. You do not hear it enough. You will always hear it here. The other thing you'll always hear is the guru, Ed Zurndorfer. He is back with us once again as part of our ongoing mission to reach, teach, and serve you. At the outset, I need to say the opinions of our guest, Ed Zurndorfer, are not the opinions of Raymond James of Serving Those Who Serve. This podcast is presented for information only and is not intended to be taken as advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. Once more, we're going to follow Ed's FedZone articles, but wait, there's one more way to learn from Ed, and that is the weekly serving. Every week, we deliver the best of Ed, Jen Meyer, Ed's webinar partner, and Benefits Ben, right to your inbox. Don't miss out. See our subscription information on the YouTube page for this podcast. Now, every now and again, I go off the rails because there's something going on. I know I'm never supposed to acknowledge time and space on a podcast, but I am so amped because a couple of my favorite sporting things in the world are going on right now, and that would be the Tour de France and the World Track and Field Championships. If you have paid attention going all the way back to the beginning, I believe if you go back into my bio, that both of my children were ranked shot putters. So that's very exciting for us. And for the first time in history, the United States has swept the shot put titles for men and women, and the men took gold, silver, and bronze. So congrats to Chase Easley, Ryan Krauser for those gold medals. Great job, guys. And I'm just a geek for the Tour de France, so it's my show. I get to talk about it. So on to the important stuff, though. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I think is one of the most important and sometimes taken for granted benefits of federal service, and that is the Federal Employee Health Benefit Program and making sure that you can keep it in retirement. So this will be a two-part podcast following Ed's two articles. So Ed, we've certainly covered FEHB during open seasons in the past. We have a great webinar on it. But as your article does, let's begin with a little background. FEHB is the largest employer plan in the U.S., and feds can begin from day one, right?
That is correct. That is correct, Dan. Federal employees who come to the government, I should say permanent employees who are hired, full-time and part-time permanent employees, when they're hired into federal service, they're allowed to join the Federal Employee Health Insurance Program, Federal Employee Health Benefits Program from day one. No underwriting, no waiting periods, no pre-existing condition exclusions. They are guaranteed issue coverage for themselves, for their members of their family, eligible members of the family, I should say, which includes spouses and children under the age of 26.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, this is as I mentioned, is a group sponsored plan. And what I just described to you is just what I would call the starting of the cake. I'm going to give you the icing on the cake here in a few moments.
Ooh,
but let me just say this, that there are many, many types of plans offered in the Federal Employee Health Insurance, and employees pay on average 25 to 28% of the premiums, and their agencies pay the other 72 to 75%. No matter what type of plan they're in, they could be in a fee-for-service plan, they can be in a preferred provider organization plan, they could be in an HMO, they could be in a high-deductible health insurance plan. It makes no difference what type of coverage they have, self-only, just for themselves, self and one eligible family member, such as a spouse, self and family, which would include themselves, and a spouse, and multiple children, and the children stay on the plan until they're age 26.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And there's also a ton of choices in this. Correct, Ed?
Many choices. No matter where you live as a federal, no matter where you live and work as a federal employee, you have access to various types of plans under the Federal Employee Health Insurance. I call it the umbrella. And once again, you can enroll in the plan when you're first hired. You can change your plan from 1 year to the next during the annual open season. Mm-hmm. And again, the federal employees have this benefit while they're working, and they contribute. They pay 25 to 28% of the premiums. Now, let me just say one thing, Dan. Sure. That, as I said a few moments ago, this is the icing. And as you know, Dan, I am a federal government retiree. I worked 32 years with the federal government. I retired back in January 2006, about 16 and a half years ago, and I got to keep my federal employee health insurance for retirement.
Yes.
This is what I call the icing, Dan, that a federal employee who's been participating in the federal employee health insurance program is allowed to keep their federal employee health insurance benefit, paying the same percentage of premiums, having the same choices, the same type of coverage in retirement as they did as employees. Mm-hmm. When people, Dan, ask me the question, what is your opinion of the federal employee health insurance program? You know, my response is, Dan, response is, it is the worst group-sponsored health insurance plan, except for all the others.
I was wondering where you're going there, Ed. You had me.
But I will tell you, Dan, I know you have worked with individuals in private industry. Many individuals. You've been in this business many years.
Yes, I have.
I'd like to ask you a question, Dan. For those people you've worked with who work for private companies many years, who had access to health insurance when they were employees, they worked for big companies, and their companies in some cases paid all the premiums for the health insurance.
Sure.
Could you please tell us how many of the people you've worked with, when they retired from these companies, got to keep their health insurance benefit in retirement?
Yeah, I would have to go back to the beginning of my career, and it would have to be places where there were union contracts or things like that allowed for that to continue. But we're going back 30 plus years.
That's correct.
Yep.
And of course, with the Affordable Care Act, which came about within the last 10 years, the Affordable Care Act says that a company that has more than 50 employees, the equivalent of more than 50 full-time employees, must offer a group health insurance to their employees. Mm-hmm. But there has never been a law in this country. There is no law, and there never will be a law that says if an employee who worked for a company in which the employer gave the employee health insurance benefits, a group health insurance plan, that once that employee leaves the company or retires from the company does not, I repeat, does not have to offer that employee health benefits in retirement.
Sure. Yep.
Matter of fact, the Supreme Court ruled, and this is before the Affordable Care Act, that when a company denies health benefits to its retirees, that is not age discrimination. They're perfectly allowed to do that.
Gotcha. Well, that's a great segue, Ed. So let's talk about our feds. So I'm a Fed. I've completed my years of service. I've had my FEHB through the entire time. I'm ready to retire. What are my initial requirements for hanging on to the coverage?
Okay. Great question, Dan. And there are two requirements. Okay. The individual who has been in federal service and is eligible to retire under what's called an immediate retirement. What does immediate retirement mean? It means that the employee, once he or she retires, will get his or her first CSRS or FERS annuity check within 1 to 2 months after they retire. They don't have to wait to get it. They retire, let's say on December 31st. I have a couple clients who retired on December 31st, 2021, this past December. They got their first annuity check on February 1st. That's called immediate retirement. As opposed to, Dan, something called deferred retirement, in which you have to wait to get your annuity check. We're going to find out later, I think, that when you go out under what's called a deferred retirement, you leave federal service, you will permanently give up your federal employee health benefits. You're not going to get those benefits back once your annuity starts.
Gotcha.
We'll also talk about the MRA plus 10 and MRA plus 20. I know this will be later on in our discussion about the MRA and MRA plus 10. It's called postponed retirement. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
Okay. So you have to retire under an immediate retirement.
Got it.
Okay. That's the first requirement. And the second requirement is, and this is very important, the retiring employee has to have been continuously enrolled in the federal employee health insurance program in their name. They have self plus whatever covered, self plus one, self and family, and they are the self, Dan. Or let's take the situation where a federal employee is married and they have a spouse who has the federal employee health insurance, who's enrolled in federal employee health insurance, himself or herself. They're the self and they're covering this retiring employee. Okay, so they've been enrolled in one way or the other for all of the 5 years continuously. Gotcha. The 5 years ending, Dan, on the effective date of their retirement. Boy, What does that mean? The effective date of retirement. If you're a FERS employee and you retire on any day of the month, the effective date of your retirement is the first day of the next month.
Gotcha.
Okay. That if you're a SERS or SERS offset employee and you retire on the first of the month or the second of a month or the third day of a month, the effective day of your retirement is the next day. So somebody retired. I know somebody retired this past January 1st, 2022. The effective date of their retirement was January 2nd, 2022.
Gotcha.
If the SERS or SERS offset employee retires from the 4th of the month to the end of the month, their effective date of their retirement is the next day of the following month. Okay.
Gotcha.
I want to make a point here, Dan, and this is very important. I know the devil's in the details. It has to be 5 continuous years ending on the day of their retirement. I'd like to share with you an example where someone almost learned the hard way that they nearly blew the 5-year rule. And I bring this up during our monthly FEHB and Medicare webinars. We have one coming up. And if anyone listening today has not attended one of our monthly FEHB, Medicare, and Tricare webinars, we hold them every month, Dan.
Don't miss them.
Our next one will be on July the 26th, which is 1 week from today. The one in August will be August the 31st. And we have another one in September, September 22nd. It's okay if I can make a plug here for the
absolutely plug away.
These webinars. It's very important. Well, here's what I bring up. So about 8 years ago, it was July 2014, I got a phone call from a gentleman who got my name. And he said, I got information about the federal employee health insurance. And the reason I'm calling you is because I had just retired from private industry. I worked 35 years in private industry. I'm 57 years old. I had health benefits with my company all along, but my company, when I retired, said, we really appreciate your service. You had a very successful career, but even though we gave you health benefits all along, we can't give you any health benefits now that you're retired. We're very sorry. So the gentleman said, listen, I understand. And I'm just going to have to make the best of my health benefit, finding health insurance. But then he found out that If he goes into federal service, now mind you, Dan, this gentleman is 57 years old, and he wants to join federal service. And he found out, and he did a little research, that if he comes into the federal government under the Federal Employee Retirement System refers and works 5 years, he could retire at age 62 with a minimum 5 years of service. He was amazed.
Yep.
But then he found out about the federal employee health insurance.
Yep.
Not only for himself, but for his wife.
Yes.
So he found himself a federal job. And he called me just to verify the information. So I said, yes, when you join federal service, and when are you going to be hired? He said, next month, on August 1st, 2014, I think it was. Yeah, 8 years ago. That you can immediately join the federal employee health insurance. And if you work 5 years and you're covered for all 5 years, you get to keep that federal employee health insurance into and throughout your retirement years. For yourself and your wife, you'll be paying the same percentage of premiums as you did an employee, 25 to 28%.
Yep.
He said, yep, that's what I was told. But then he said to me, I got to tell you that my company was very kind to me. And they said, we realize we're not going to give you health insurance benefits in retirement, but what we will do, you retired on June 30th, 2014. We will keep you on our group health insurance plan through the end of the year, and we'll pay all the premiums.
Whoopsies.
He said, that's very kind of you, and I think I'll take you up on it. So his question to me is, if he doesn't join right away when he's hired, when can he join the federal employee health insurance? I said, the next opportunity will be open season. The federal employee health insurance program has open seasons every year, and they run from the second Monday of November through the second Monday of December. This happens every year, Dan. But here's what you have to note, Dan, that when you join the federal employee health insurance during an open season, or you change plans, when does your coverage become effective? Your federal employee health insurance. The first day of the new leave year, not January 1st. Now, January 1st may be the first day of the new leave year. In fact, this coming year will be, but not in this case. The first day of the 2015 leave year was January the 8th, 2015. He said, I understand that. I will tell my company that even if I got to go on COBRA, pay the full amount of premiums for those extra 8 days between December 31st, 2014 and January the 8th, 2015, I'll do that. Fine. So we're all on the same page here, Dan. Okay, turn up the clock 5 years.
Right. He
calls me in November 2019. And he said, do you remember me? I was one who called you about, I came to work for the federal government at the age of 57 and I'm going to work 5 years and then retire with full benefits. I said, yeah. He said, well, I worked the 5 years and now it's November 2019. I got my 5 years under my belt and I'm 62 years old. I'm going to put in for my retirement on December 31st, 2019. You're going to retire on December 31st, 2019, which means the effective date of your retirement will be January the 1st, 2015. And then an alarm went off on my head.
Yep.
I said, wait a minute. If I remember correctly, didn't you tell me that you're going to enroll in the federal employee health insurance during the 2014 open season, November? I did. I said, your coverage did not take effect until January the 8th, 2015. If you retire on December 31st, 2019, your effective date of your retirement will be January 1st, 2020. Your coverage took effect, your federal employee health benefits program took effect on January the 8th, 2015. Do the math here. Go forward 5 years. What do you come up with? January the 8th, 2020. You're going to be short.
Right.
What, 7 days? The OPM is going to deny you health benefits. You didn't have it for the 5 continuous years. Very
true.
He said, what do? I said, tear up the application, retirement application, put in your retirement, make it effective January. You're going to retire on January 31st, 2020.
Yep.
He did. He called me back and he said, after he had retired and he kept his health benefits, you saved me a lot of aggravation.
Absolutely.
You.
Absolutely.
I cannot emphasize this 5-year continuous thing, Dan.
Sure. No, that's important. And I'm assuming, so if we've got our immediate retirement, we've got at least 5 years, there's paperwork associated with carrying it through, or does it just automatically keep going?
When there's no paperwork to continue your coverage. Okay. There would be paperwork to fill out if you decide you don't want to continue your federal employee health benefits in retirement.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the first example from your article, which is you have FERS MRA 10 and FERS MRA 20. Let's talk through those because, as you touched on earlier, there's immediate and postponed, which we talked about in our last podcast. So let's go ahead and start in on those.
Okay. So we're talking about the MRA plus 10 and MRA plus 20 immediate retirement, and then we'll talk about the MRA plus 10, MRA plus 20 postponed. As reviewed, Dan, if someone has reached his or her minimum retirement age, which is any age between age 55 and age 57, depending on what year you're born. For example, if you were born in 1966, your MRA is 56 years and 4 months, 56 years and 4 months. If you're born after 1969, your MRA is 57. Okay. All right. So if an individual, a FERS employee, I should say, it's only FERS employees here, has reached his or her MRA and has between 10 and 19 years of service, that employee could retire immediately. And if he or she has been enrolled in the Federal Employee Health Insurance Program for the 5 continuous years ending on the date of retire, they too can keep their federal employee health benefits once they retire. The same thing would be true for someone who has between 20 and 29 years of service. This is called the MRA plus 20 immediate retirement.
Gotcha.
As we point out in the article in the Fed Zone, and we talked about in our last podcast, there's going to be a reduction in their annuity because they retired before, in the case of MRA plus 10, before age 62, in the case of the MRA plus 20, before age 60. There's a 5% reduction, permanent reduction in their annuity. But they still can keep their health benefits.
Gotcha.
If the person, in our example here, who did the MRA plus 10, they had between 10 and 19 years of service, says, I'm not so sure that I really want that reduction in my annuity. I think I'm going to postpone the start of my annuity until age 62. Gotcha. If they start their annuity at age 62, there'll be no reduction. But with no annuity, no paycheck, because now the person has left federal service and they're not receiving annuity, there are no health benefits.
That's bad.
Why would there be no health benefits? Because they have no way of paying it.
Sure.
You pay your health insurance premiums when you're an employee. The premiums are deducted from your paycheck. When you're an annuitant, like I am, you have your health insurance premiums deducted from your monthly annuity check.
Yep.
If you're getting neither, you can't have the benefit.
Gotcha.
But when the individual turns 62, as we pointed out in our last podcast, as I point out in the Fed Zone columns I've written on the MRA plus 20 MRA plus 10 and MRA plus 20 post-retirement.
Mm-hmm.
When you apply for your annuity, and I'll give you the form again, Dan.
Yep.
It's RI 92-19. R stands for retirement. I stands for insurance. This is an OPM form. You apply for your annuity. You will also apply to get your health insurance benefits back. Yes, I said back. They come back. You're only temporarily out of health benefits between the time you leave federal service and when your annuity starts. In the case of the MRA plus 20, you could do that at age 60. But OPM has to be notified that you want to start receiving your annuity, and you fill out form RI 92-19. And on that form is the section that says, do you want to get your health insurance benefits back? You say yes, and you'll get them back.
Gotcha. Now, as you press on in the article, you bring up a term that might not be, just a common term for a lot of our feds, and that's qualifying service. Okay, tell us what that means.
Okay, qualifying service. Okay, we're talking about in terms of the federal employee health benefits, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so qualifying service would include full-time permanent service, full-time, part-time permanent service. You work part-time. Of course, if you work part-time, then you're going to be paying more in premiums because the 20, if you're a full-time employee, you pay 25 to 28% of the premiums. And if you're working half-time, you're going to be paying double that amount. It still counts for as far as eligibility to keep the federal employee health insurance in retirement. Okay. I mentioned earlier that if you are married and your spouse is a federal employee and you're under their enrollment, they have the self and you are the one or part of the family, that also counts towards the 5-year rule. Okay.
Gotcha.
If you have Tricare, what is Tricare? If you are a retired member of the Uniformed Services,
mm-hmm.
either for active duty or you retired as a reservist, starting to receive your reserve retirement pay at age 60, you're eligible for something called Tricare or Champus, okay,
mm-hmm.
or Champ VA. If you are enrolled in that, that will count for service towards the 5-year rule. 5-year rule. Okay. What is not counted is if you're under Medicare. Medicare does not count. Also, we might have some people who are what they call NAF employees, non-appropriated fund employees, who have their own the equivalent of federal employee health insurance, but it's not the same thing. That service as a NAF employee does not count.
Got it. Okay. And Ed, what about breaks in service? Because sometimes feds leave and come back.
Good point, Dan. And if you have a break in service and you come back, that can be counted as towards the 5-year rule. I mean, you add up all your breaks in service. I have an example here. I don't think I put this in the Fed zone, but a colleague of mine, a fellow benefit speaker, I want to bring up this example to make my point. But if you leave federal service, come back, when you were where you were in federal service, you were enrolled in the federal employee health insurance, that you left, and then you came back, re-enrolled. The time that you are away federal service will not count towards the 5-year rule. Why? Because when you're not in federal service, you're not eligible
to
enroll in federal employment insurance. They're not going to count that.
Gotcha. So
when added up, then your total, the 5 years of service, if it turns out let's say the last 5 years of your federal service, you're enrolled in it, then there's no problem. If, let's say, early in your career, you worked for the federal government for, let's say, 3 years, enrolled in federal employee health insurance, left the government, and then came back to the government and worked 2 more years and then retired,
mm-hmm.
and you were enrolled in federal employee, you get to keep the federal employee health insurance.
Sure.
Let me share my example here. I have a colleague, very good benefit speaker, and she did that. She was in the government in 1988, 1989, 1990. She was enrolled in the federal employee health insurance. She had coverage for herself and her husband. After 3 years of federal service, she decided to leave federal service. And she told her personnel office she's leaving federal service. And her personnel office said to her, you are required to withdraw your FERS contributions. That's the money you contribute every pay date. Every FERS employee contributes a portion of his or her paycheck into the FERS Retirement Disability Fund. That gives you what's called, that makes you eligible for to retire. And it's also the contribution is going to be used for in the purpose of computing your FERS annuity. Anyhow, my colleague, first name is Linda, said, I don't have to take the money out. I'm not required to. I can keep the money in. And her HR said to her, you're a fool. She said, why am I a fool? They said to her, you can't get any type of retirement, even a deferred annuity for working less than 5 years. You worked only 3 years. So Linda said, I'm well aware of that, but my plan is to come back to federal service.
Gotcha.
You know what? And then finish out my career. You know what HR said to her? They said to her, no one ever comes back.
Oh, that's false.
So Linda promptly said, never say never.
Absolutely. I'm with Linda.
Turn the clock up, Dan. 22 years. November 2012. Linda turned age 60 that month. She got herself a federal job. She re-enrolled in the federal employee health insurance for herself and her husband. She worked 2 years until November 2014, at which time she turned 62 years old. And she retired.
Yep.
She had her 5 years, Dan.
Sure.
Question, with or without federal employee health benefits?
Well, did she enroll?
She enrolled for the time she was there. She was enrolled in the federal employee health insurance 1988, 1989, 1990. She came back in 2012, re-enrolled in the federal employee health insurance, worked 2 more years, and then retired. Did she have coverage for 5 years?
Yes.
Was it continuous?
For her ability to do it, because she couldn't continue when she wasn't there, yes.
Exactly, Dan.
Yeah.
Now, who's the fool?
Not Linda.
Okay.
I'm not going to pick on it, but I'm just saying Linda is definitely not the fool.
Right.
So
it doesn't, everything that has to be continuous. And then people say, well, she left the government. Yeah, she did. Between 1990 and 2012, she was not eligible to enroll in the federal employee health insurance.
Gotcha.
You can't count those years.
Another term a lot of folks may not know, you touch on late election. How does that happen? How would that work?
An individual is considered to have been continuously enrolled when allowed to make a late election to join the program after an individual's employing office determined that the individual was unable to enroll in a timely fashion for reasons beyond the individual's control. Let's do an example here. So I have a fellow, his name is Mike.
Yep.
Okay. Mike's HR office notified him on March 30th, 2016, that he could make a late election to enroll in the federal employee health insurance.
Okay.
He promptly enrolled.
Okay.
And on December 31st, 2020, about almost 5 years later, but not quite 5 years, he retired from federal service. Mike, I think he had about 7 years of federal service.
Okay.
Mike is able to continue his federal employee health insurance into retirement, even though he was enrolled in the federal employee health insurance for less than 5 years. Remember, he was enrolled between March 30, 2016 and December 31st, 2020. He's short 5 years by about 3 months.
Yep.
But because March 20th, 2016 is considered to be Mike's first opportunity to enroll in the federal employee health insurance, and he did. So OPM's retirement office makes the ultimate decision, and therefore Mike was allowed to keep the federal employee health insurance in retirement, even though he didn't have it for 5 continuous years because he enrolled at a late date through no fault of his own.
Gotcha. Okay, and then you come up with 2 twists here, and they're both temporary. One's temporary employee, and one's temporary continuation of coverage. So, if someone's a temporary employee and they choose not to enroll in FEHB, that doesn't hurt them, right?
That is correct, and the reason for that, Dan, is because when your agency is not contributing any part of the premiums, you're paying the entire FEHB premiums. That time does not count for eligibility. It's only when your agency, when the government is contributing 72 to 75% as far as the premiums will count towards eligibility to keep the federal employee health insurance in retirement.
Gotcha. Right. And then with temporary continuation of coverage, that means somebody's actually no longer a federal employee, but the coverage is still going on. And your article says that doesn't count either, correct?
Yes. And for the same reason, Dan, the reason when you are under what's called TCC, temporary continuation coverage, you are paying the employer portion of the premium, the employee portion of the premium, plus I think that there's a 2% administrative charge. The government's not contributing anything. Therefore, that will not count towards eligibility.
Gotcha. So Ed, I got to ask you put it in the article, but I'd be asking anyway. A lot of determining going on here. Who makes the determination?
The agency that the person retires from will make what I call just a temporary determination, but the real determination is made by OPM's retirement office when the individual's retirement application is being adjudicated.
Gotcha.
So that's going to be the OPM's retirement office ultimately makes makes the decision whether the retiring employee keeps the health insurance into and throughout retirement.
Gotcha. Folks, this is really important stuff. You need to have good information and accurate data before you pull the trigger on that retirement paperwork. And I'll throw in another important plug here. We have a webinar on it, but you need to make sure when you retire and you're married, you got to make sure you provide a survivor benefit for the spouse so that health benefits can continue. Ed's got an article coming on that. We're gonna cover it in one form or another in a podcast as well. But you're gonna just hear me drop these things in because it's a tragedy when people just make a mistake or go off of incomplete information, and a spouse ends up, without health insurance because a survivor benefit wasn't provided. And sometimes it can be because, some knucklehead out there suggested that somebody buy an insurance policy instead. And, Ed and I will take swings at that periodically anyway. And I think we'll take a bite out of that in the next podcast towards the end. But you want to make sure that you're hanging on to FEHB. You want to make sure that your spouse is hanging on to FEHB because it's just that important. Right, Ed?
Absolutely. And just want to make one more plug again.
Sure.
Please. Our FEHB and Medicare webinars.
Yep.
And also we have, it's called FEHB, Medicare, and Tricare, which again is the group health insurance plan covering retired members of the uniformed services. We have the FEHB, Medicare, and Tricare webinar held every month. If you didn't hear it the first time in terms of maybe you didn't get all the information, come back the next month or the following month. There's no limit. All you got to do is sign up. And also, Dan, as you know, one of the things that is offered as part of these webinars is you have what's called a part 2, in which you can talk to a serving those who serve representative who is fully versed in all the rules regarding not only FEHB, but federal employee benefits, in which if you have any questions Any doubts, you come to part 2.
Absolutely.
It's a great
Absolutely.
service, Dan. I cannot emphasize it enough. And it's so important you get the right information at the right time. You don't want to look back and say, gee, I really messed up. You don't want that to happen.
Could not agree with you more, Ed. And as I always say, thank you for what you do for us and for the federal community, especially for what you teach our team, folks. If you're talking to somebody outside of serving those who serve, I just don't think you're going to get the same level. I just don't. I'm biased. It's STWS or settle for less, in my opinion. But then again, I am biased. So, Ed, thank you for what you do with Feds. Thank you for how you help our team. And folks, that is a wrap. We are serving those who serve. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel and Spotify, and remember to share it with friends and strangers. Check us out on Twitter and LinkedIn. Don't forget those live webinars every single week. Hit us up at stwserve.com. You'll see the big webinar button. Click it, and then you will see the entire menu. There's months and months and months of them. So sign up for one, sign up for all. The guru will come to you, reach you where you are, teach you where you are, serve you where you are. Be sure to read Ed every week in the Fed Zone. That's fed-zone.com. That's also at the SWServe website. And don't forget to subscribe to the weekly serving. Best of Ed, best of Jen Meyer, best of Benefits Ben, delivered right to you. We curate it for you. It's awesome stuff. You will love it. So the Ed and the other Fed stars will come directly to you. So for Ed, the crew at Serving Those Who Serve, and me, Dan Sipe, give the Tour de France a chance. Watch it. Cheer for Team USA. Good luck. Godspeed. And above all, remember, it's your Fed life. Make it a great one because you deserve it. Stay well, everybody. We are out. Go Team USA.
Thank you for listening to the FEDLIFE Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Serving Those Who Serve or Raymond James. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services.
Raymond James is not affiliated and does not endorse the opinions or services of any of the quoted professionals or their respective firms. Any opinions are those of Dan Sipe and not necessarily those of RJFS or Raymond James. This case study is for illustrative purposes only. Individual cases will vary. Raymond James is not affiliated with and does not endorse the opinions or services of the quoted professionals or their respective organizations.
Neither Raymond James Financial Services nor any Raymond James financial advisor renders advice on tax issues. These matters should be discussed with the appropriate professional. Investing involves risk, and you may incur a profit or loss regardless of strategy selected, including diversification and asset allocation.